Welcome everyone, and today we're on the inside edge of the Junior Grand Prix series. First of all, this is a collaborative video, so my voice won't be the only one you'll be hearing here. Expect other people to cover other stages of the series. It's a big project, this one, because there's so many competitions, so we're all working together on it, and hopefully you like this different kind of style video. Onto the actual series. Let's first start with what is the Junior Grand Prix. If you've never heard of it, if you've never followed it, if you maybe watch the Senior Grand Prix and you don't really care about the juniors. The Junior Grand Prix is a series of 7 competitions for junior figure skaters, 13 to 18 years old for singles and 13 to 23 for pairs and dance skaters, around the world, with the purpose of giving skaters experience and international exposure, as well as the space to improve before they get to the senior ranks. Usually Junior Grand Prix are held in different countries from the senior version, and part of the ISU Vision 2030 is to use the Junior Grand Prix as an opportunity to expand the sport all over the world. So they've picked a bigger variety of locations this time, not only your usuals, even though some of those are still repeated. We still get Gdansk, we still get Riga, we still get some of the ones we're familiar with, but then you also get locations like Baku or Abu Dhabi or Bangkok. Bangkok has hosted junior events before, but you know what I mean. I actually joke that the Junior Grand Prix looks a little bit like the Formula One schedule, just because so many of the places overlap, but that's beside the point. The top 6 skaters or teams over the entire series of 7 competitions in each discipline go to the Junior Grand Prix final, which is held before the Senior Grand Prix final, but in the same city in the same week, and gives them the chance to be beside and watch the best skaters in the world on the senior ranks. Points are awarded just like the senior series, depending on placement for each of those competitions, and those points are added up to determine those top 6 spots. So, for example, a skater that has gotten, say, 2 golds, each gold gives you 15 points, so they get 30 points total to go to the final. For example, a gold and a silver is 15 for the gold, 13 for the silver, 28 points, and also go to the final. And it depends. Sometimes you get bad assignment luck, and even if you medal both times, other people will have higher point totals overall, and you won't be able to go to the final. For example, last season, Adam Hagara got a bronze and a silver, and he was just barely cut off from going to the final, even though he got in 2 podium placements on his compatriot, Lukas Vaklovic, who got a 4th and a gold, because that gold is weighted more. The math just works out, and he got that 6th place at the final. It's weird. Skating Scores has the progressive tallies for it, and we will be showing it here on the video as well, so you don't get confused about who's getting what points this year. Without further ado, let's get into the first stage of the series. The Riga Cup is the first stage of the Junior Grand Prix this year. As much as I love a lot of the people here, I am going to only talk about the medalists for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. 4th, 5th place people who, had this been an international championship, would have had small medals for either the short or the free, because their stories are relevant to why the podium is the way it is. But it's gonna be long enough as it is. I don't need it to be any longer. So let's start off with the men. Predictably, Ryo Nakata from Japan won this by a landslide. He won by 25.23 points with 2 fantastic programs. He is reusing his short program from last year, and it's only gotten better. If you watched my Rising Stars video, you know I raved about both of his programs from last season, and it's just incredible. It's evidenced by the new personal best it earned here. It is energetic, it is precise, it is full of power. He nailed all his jumps, the step sequence is amazing. Tenenmark on the commentary team really highlighted one of the biggest improvements in Rio over the year in controlling that power he has. He used to get very excited and make mistakes, which is what happened to him at the Olympics in 2024, which is why he lost the podium there. But now he knows how to get over a mistake and not overpower it, or overpower it after a successful first jump. He can balance that more, and I think it has served him really, really well. Speaking of the balance between control and power. His free skate is set to gladiator, and while it's in his usual style of that power, like very punchy program, you can see some of that control, especially in the beginning. Not only in the choreography, it's a bit slower and more controlled, really is the word, but also in the way he nailed everything after popping his triple axel. A little bit in that excitement from those first two successful quads, but he committed to the rest of it after that popped triple axel, and it came out perfectly. On the other hand, what was surprising was Grayson Long winning the silver medal. Grayson used to be very chaotic in the typical fashion for Canadian men, but this season he's found consistency. He also won silver at the Cranberry Cup, and competition just solidifies that Cranberry wasn't just a one-hit wonder. This is his second season with the triple axel, and he's been able to include two of them in his free skate comfortably. He's really showing a lot of growth and feels like a switch in him, which is great. I mean, he's been working with the cricket club and Brian Orser for a long time, so it isn't any kind of like new change of coach or all that. Probably just getting more comfortable with his body. The juniors go through this sometimes. I am very excited to see where he goes next and if this consistency continues. And finally, Genrik Garten from Germany took the bronze here. His situation is really interesting because he's one of the few juniors who is senior eligible, and he had a lot riding on this competition because based on it, the federation would choose who would go to the Olympic qualifier in September, which is going to be held in Beijing, between him and Nikita Starostin. Genrik is a very technical skater. He has high value elements like the quad lutz in his arsenal, and he did go for two of them in his free program. He fell on one of them, but he did go for two. However, his execution on those isn't consistent. Like I said, he fell on his second quad lutz, and he doesn't have the components content yet. So he can get big points, but if I am being completely honest, the reason he ended up with the bronze is because Jan Hawley of New Zealand was adjusting his program on the fly after a mistake, and that layout wasn't optimized for that kind of adjusting. So in addition to the mistakes on some elements, he popped his quad toe into a double. His final triple flip was invalidated because of a part of the Zayak rule, which states that you can't repeat more than two triple jumps. So in this case, Jan Hao had two triple lutzes and two triple toes, so he couldn't have two triple flips. He would have needed to use a salchow for that last jump or adjust his program content a little bit differently. It's a weird layout, to be perfectly honest, and I can pull up the protocols both from this event and Cranberry Cup where he beat Grayson if you want to see how it's supposed to look and what happened here, because I honestly was a little bit confused. I had forgotten about that part of the Zayak rule, and I was just thinking of like, oh, you can't have three of the same jump in a program, so you can't have, say, three triple flips, and that's what I thought was what happened. And then I looked at the protocol and I was a little bit confused until I was reminded about the you can't repeat more than two triples in the same program. So yeah, it is very sad for Jan Hao. I really like both of his programs, especially his free. His free is magnificent when it works out, but in this case, Genrik took the bronze and he is going to the qualifier in Beijing. He still doesn't have citizenship fully, so we have no idea if he'll go to the Olympics, but he's going to try to win that spot for Germany at the qualifier. The women are up next, and Mei Okada of Japan narrowly missed out on the final last season with two bronze medals, but was finally able to capture the gold at this event. Both of her programs were beautiful, and I loved all the little accents on the music. She has good technique and great ice coverage, as well as good transitions that don't have super long setups for each element. Big GOEs and well-deserved. Her free skate was also fantastic, with the same sense of detail in the choreography, sustained and elegant throughout. She was also able to really backload some of her jumps. There's two that are two of the last three elements, which I found impressive. Her goal is to make the Junior Grand Prix final because it will be held in her hometown of Nagoya, and she said that her family and friends will all go if she makes it. Ji-Woo of Korea won silver in her Junior Grand Prix debut. She is a wonderful young talent with pretty good jumps and a lot of movement quality that friend of the channel, Moonchild, said reminds her of a younger Gia Shin, and I agree with that. She is light and elegant and joyful, and she may not have the speed that Mei Okada has, but the control is there, and like Mark and Ted said on the commentary, it felt very sincere, very natural. The free skate was also beautiful. I love the two variations on the Inebauer. She goes in front and like stretches and then goes back with the traditional position. It really lived up to the name of the music she chose, Flower Through Concrete. And finally, the surprise bronze medalist was Elisabeth de Bern of Switzerland, taking over the bronze spot that had been Alina Goydina's after the short program. She is the first Swiss medalist on the Junior Grand Prix in 25 years, which is incredible. She had two relatively steady programs with a nice triple-triple combo in both. Yusong Kim, who had this been a championship, would have won a small bronze in the free skate, was a bit too far back after the short to make a full comeback. But regardless, I think that both of Elizabeth's programs were nice, and it is great to have a new name to look out for. And it seems to me like Switzerland is making a really big play for big names in upcoming years. You have, well, Elizabeth, you have Anastasia Bradenberg, and there were several other Swiss skaters in other disciplines, and even in the seniors who are making big names for themselves, and that is fantastic. Now it's on to the pairs event. Ava Kemp and Jonathan Elizarov of Canada make a triumphant return after a complicated season filled with injury, showing a lot of senior qualities in both of their programs. I also love the way they managed to give a further story to Claire de Lune about a poet and the moon rather than just letting the music carry the emotion because it's so amazing and so famous. Their lifts in particular were astounding. Their singles elements and the throws were a little bit shakier, but overall they did very well, and there's just a lot of refinement that you don't see in junior pairs as much because the gap is bigger between the juniors and the seniors in this discipline. In the silver position, Shuangqi Zhang and Wang Jiangfeng were one of the two teams from China that really impressed me here. Both their singles elements and their lifts were really solid for the most part, especially for a team that's apparently so new to skating together, if I'm remembering the commentary correctly. After the retirement of Suyen Han, Chinese skating has been in a little bit of a slump, but I see a bright future with the two pairs teams that competed at this event, both Zhang and Feng and Cheng and Dong. Just a ton of potential and polish, especially like I said, when pairs is a discipline that show the biggest gap between seniors and juniors. Unless you're talking about Vetelkin and Berlova, but they're a different story. And finally in the bronze, Naomi Williams and Lachlan Luer from the United States overcame a nightmare travel scenario to capture the bronze. They felt as cursed as Roman Sadovsky was on the season before the last with plane cancellations and losing their bags, though thankfully they'd been allowed to travel with the skates and costumes in their carry-ons and could arrive with enough time for the competition. I particularly enjoyed their short program. It was beautiful. I just really like the energy they bring. Just give it their all. Again, level of maturity that I feel like is not just there yet in teams further down, but it happens with juniors, and when you have more experience, obviously that will pay off in dividends and you can get a medal. I'm really looking forward to seeing them and whatever assignment they have next. I am not sure what it is, but I really want to see these programs again, especially hopefully without as much tiredness interfering because of all the travel disasters. On to the ice dance. It was a very tight competition where Leila Vellion and Alexander Brandes from Canada narrowly took the gold after an excellent free dance with the amazing concept of art pieces in a museum coming to life. They really captured that feeling of art, both with the rigidity of statues carved from stone, but also the fluidity of an impressionist painting. Deep edges, precision, sharp movement, all creating a magical program. Their rhythm dance was also incredibly creative, with innovative movement and the kind of unison that's just second nature to them, which makes sense considering they've been skating together for 11 years. They certainly have the potential to follow in the footsteps of their coach Scott Moir. Daniel Mouadin and Theo Bijot from France provided some pressure for Vellion and Brandes with two incredible programs of their own that earned the silver. Very fast twizzles and a ton of creativity as well in the lifts and the movements. Their energy really lent itself to the 90s theme for the rhythm dance, but I also really like the contrast in their free skate with Nature Boy and Bad Guy without it being a bad music at it. Lots of intensity, and their lifts were an absolute highlight. They were so unique. Just left me with my jaw on the floor at times. And finally, the bronze was taken by Jasmine Robertson and Chase Roner of the United States of America. They also skated to Grooves in the Heart for their rhythm dance, and they had a really solid program, especially considering this was their first noteworthy international competition, having only teamed up in January. But what impressed me most was their free dance to Notre Dame de Paris. They were very connected to the music and to each other. You can really feel the emotion of the piece, and their transitions into and out of the elements were great. I really appreciated the split jump entry into the twizzles, for example. Ice dance is a discipline that renews itself a lot in a new season, especially in the juniors, because so many graduated into senior ranks. So I very much look forward to see what these teams and everyone else does as the series progresses.
Hello, hello. I go by Matt, and I believe that this should be the first time that I'm being involved in something that's published on this channel. I have some other stuff in the works. Hopefully, it will be released in a somewhat timely manner. I've got an avatar that's being commissioned as we speak, a cute lizard guy. It's going to be great. For now, I'm here to go over the rather interesting event that took place in Ankara. So, starting with the ladies. So, just starting at the top of the podium, we have the Japanese Mayuko Oka. Team Japan is very deep, but even this is kind of shocking for just a junior Grand Prix debut to come out here with this level of skating. The short program was phenomenal. The free, I don't know if it was as much to my taste. Either way, it was obviously very well skated. I have to say, immediately when that short program started, and especially when she started going into the jumps, I thought that the stylistically at least, there was a very strong resemblance to another Japanese skater, Rika Hongo, in terms of, just her speed, just the very strong style of skating, the way that she attacked her elements, including in the free skate, she did have a triple axel attempt that unfortunately she did not land, but I'm sure once she does land it, it's going to be very spectacular with that whole program and just her overall style of skating. It's going to be something to look out for. So really, it's just a fantastic debut for her. So then moving on to the second place finisher, who was Korea's Yoo-jae Kim. From looking at this competition before it happened, I probably assumed that Yoo-jae was the most likely gold medalist. I wasn't familiar with Mayuko's game at that time, and that's obviously changed. And despite the fact that that has caused Yoo-jae to have to settle for silver here, she was definitely not a disappointment with the performances that she produced. The short program, I thought it was brilliant. I really liked the atmosphere that it created. The step sequence caught my eye. It seemed that the step sequence was kind of a step up in terms of the skating skills that she was showcasing and has been showcasing up to now. I really liked the free program as well. The free skate dress I thought was beautiful. The program was also very technically impressive. Of course, she actually went for the triple axel and landed it. I think that she ended up just losing to Mayuko on the component score and also on some of the GOEs of the finer elements of the program. The triple axel looked pretty solid, despite the fact that over the past few years, I've kind of worried about whether or not she'd be able to maintain that element. It looked good here. And her conditioning also seemed really nice and consistent. She wasn't really tired or anything by the end of her program. And that's something that a lot of juniors struggle with, but the top two on the podium here seemed to have that really on lock. That was something that was very good to see. And then finally, to round out the podium, there is the United States' Sophie Jolene von Felten. I think it's undeniable that Sophie is a very exciting skater. She does one of, if not the hardest jumping layouts out of all the ladies, junior or senior. And that ability put her in first place after the short program, which, by the way, I thought was an impressive improvement in components as well. She's the only one doing a triple axel in the short, despite all three medalists here at least trying to do one in the free skate. The jumps were not everything, though. The theming of the short was obviously very important and personal to her. It was a tribute program to those who passed away in the tragic crash of American Airlines Flight 5342. And even with the technical difficulty, I still thought the program was really moving. I thought she had notably improved her interpretation, the transitions. I really liked the double axel with the Ina Bauer. It flowed right into the inside edge on the landing. I just have a lot of praise for that short program. I thought it was tremendous. But the free, on the other hand, despite having a huge technical load, which included a quad salchow and not one but two triple axels, was unfortunately riddled with a lot of mistakes on the jumps. And it's understandable for such a demanding program, that you would have errors, but that's sort of the gamble that you're making when you load the program with so much difficulty. You sacrifice some of the components so that you can focus on those elements, and you really need those elements to work. And when they don't go so well, you lose so many points, not only on top of those components, but on the GOE, if you fall, the deductions. It's just way too costly. And in the end, she did manage to hold on to the podium, but it was definitely far from her best showing. I think that excellent short program is really what kept her in contention here. And before we move on to the next discipline, I really quickly want to shout out South Korea's Min Song Kim, especially for that short program. I loved it. It was a cover of Nocturne by that same guitarist who plays in Yuma Kageyama's short program, and her interpretation was so, so good. But unfortunately, she basically took herself out of contention after the short program because the jumps did not work very well at all. She had a fall on the opening triple toe, which was supposed to be the combination. She popped the triple loop. The double axel was good, but aside from that, the interpretation was so good. The skating skills were shocking again. The step sequence was my favorite of the competition, no doubt, and it got a level 4, thank God, because if it didn't get a level 4, I would have been a little bit heated, if you can't tell. But just, I gotta say something about this program because it stuck out to me. It was so, so, so good. Now, with that said, I want to go ahead and move on to the ice dance category. And again, I'm going to start with the gold medalists of this event, which was the Ukrainian team of Irina Pidgaina and Artyom Koval. Due to the ISU's decision to pigeonhole their ice dance teams into doing very similar and same-ish rhythm dances, I unfortunately don't have very much to say about the rhythm dances because they were all, well, very similar. And it's not their fault, it's the results of the rules. Hopefully that changes. I really, really just don't care for that rule set. But I do have a lot to say about the freeze. And to start with this team taught me what a jukebox musical is. This was a foreign concept to me prior to this. When they took to the ice and Mark announced that they were skating to Moulin Rouge, but the musical version as opposed to the film version, I expected it to be the Warhorse that I'm used to, but perhaps with some alternative performances for like the singing and maybe different versions of the instrumentals as well. What I got was a medley of 2000s hits. And for a figure skating program, to me, that's not my favorite choice. I would prefer it to be more cohesive as opposed to all of the, I guess I would have to characterize it as just jumbled up with a bunch of music cuts. And to me, that's not what I prefer to see, but that's just my preference. So if you liked it, then more power to you. One thing I definitely can't take away from was the technical score because their elements were very good. Their twizzles, namely the twizzles actually, were very in sync compared to the other teams who noticeably, at least to my eye, had a little bit more trouble keeping the sync. So they were very solid, and I really can't take anything away from them in a technical aspect. But it's just, for me, the program doesn't land. And I want to say that that's not to say that they weren't committed to it, because they definitely were performing it, and they definitely were committed to it. So you'll never hear me saying that they weren't performing. It's just, for me, it wasn't my preferred style of performance. On the other side of that, though, a team whose program I personally connected with quite a lot was the second place finishing team, Canadians Charlie Anderson and Caden Dawson. For me, this style of program lands so much better. It was emotional, it was musical, it was satisfying. I guess compared to the first place finishing team, the elements, except technically this team's actually got the highest level on the twizzle sequence, but I did notice throughout the program they did have a little bit of a lapse compared to Pidgaina and Koval in terms of just the overall synchronicity of like the turns. That's just a nitpick though, because I really, really, really enjoyed this program. Another thing that I wanted to highlight from this program was the musical accentuation on even like the stationary lift and just all throughout the program really, but just that's one that stuck out to me as worth mentioning. It was really, really well done. And especially for a team that's this young to be showing already this level of like skill when it comes to conveying emotional performances, that is a sign of great things to come. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes to in the future when they're already performing at this level. And much the same can be said for the third place finishers, Ian and Varese from France. They were also sublime just to watch. Much of the same comments that I said about the last team can be said about them in terms of just they have to work on staying completely in sync with like the twizzles and the turns throughout the program. The elements didn't receive the same marks that the other two teams did, but I really liked this program. It might actually have been my favorite program of the free dance. I just thought it was great. It was kind of somber, but it kind of had a spell that it cast, and they never really broke it. They could have cast it a little bit tighter on some of those turns in the synchronicity, but it was still really, really good. Overall, this podium was quite strong. And with that podium rounded out, I'm going to move on into the men's event, which I'm very excited to talk about, mostly because of the winner, who might just be my favorite junior man right now. And I am, of course, talking about Mink Yuseo. I am so thrilled to see the progress that he has made this season. We knew he was special in the last couple of seasons since he won the junior world title. I've been sort of on the train as much as I could be on the train for like a junior skater, because I do try to not get super invested into the juniors, but he's just such an undeniable talent. This season, his programs have completely different vibes from each other. The short program is kind of more of a playful vibe, and the long is Exogenesis, which I was originally skeptical if I would like the program, because Exogenesis, it's one of those war horses where it's kind of like, when watching, sometimes I would get the thought like, shouldn't this be performed by an older athlete? Shouldn't this be performed by someone who has more experience, more woes that they can convey through the music? Because I feel like that's kind of what it's suited towards. But I'm happy to report that this one is good. It does make me kind of feel things when I watch it, which was surprising because, like I said, all throughout the ice dance segment, I am not expecting that out of juniors, but it's happening a lot more often these days. And I guess it's just speaking to the talent and the level that we're at right now with juniors. But the technical aspect has improved so much. He did 3 out of 3 triple axels here, including introducing a new transition that I don't think he was doing before this season, the running 3 turns into the triple axel, which he did on the second triple axel in the free skate and also the one in the short program. Very, very impressive. It does remind me of Adam Hagara in a sense, though his is not quite as spectacular, I'm sorry to say, as Adam's. It's still commendable. It's exceptional quality, and his consistency is absolutely amazing. So I'm just so excited to see how this progresses through the season. If he's going to try to add something on top of it, it's going to be very exciting. So the gold medalist, hands down, and probably my favorite to watch in this event was Minkyu. Now, in second place was Sena Takahashi of Japan. Now, of course, he also was very, very impressive here, but he just had a couple of minor bobbles minor bobbles and one fall that ended up costing him that top placement, in my opinion, because I do think that this program had potentially a higher scoring potential than what Minkyu did, but it was just the difference in consistency between the two that caused him to end up scoring lower like he did. He clearly has a sort of aesthetic that they're going for this season, because in my opinion, both of his programs kind of fit the same vibe. I'm going to say something that might seem a little bit out of left field, but it's giving Christian contemporary vibes, which is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think when you look at the free skate costume, literally having a cross on the back of it, it's not that out there, but it might be a little bit out there. But it is just kind of what I got from it. I do like the programs, though. They feel very airy, and he has so much speed. It's crazy. And also worth noting is his landing position, especially in the short program. When he lands his jumps, he has this very wide open position with his arms, and watching him go on those nice running edges with that position is so satisfying. But he was overall very solid. Aside from one fall on the first triple axel in his free skate, he had a step out on the triple salchow that he opened the free skate with, and it was probably because in training he tries to do a quad salchow, so it just caused him to over-rotate it a bit. Overall, he was great, but he just ended up in second place due to his mistakes. But he very much kept himself in contention to qualify for the final, and that's really the main goal at your first Grand Prix assignment. And then finally, the bronze medal went to the American Lucius Kazanecki. So compared to the other two medalists, Lucius was definitely the weakest when it came to that second mark. When it came to the component score, he wasn't showing us the same content that we were getting from Senna or from Minkyu. But what he did bring us was two quad jumps, and even though the first one had a fall on the triple toe at the end of the combination, he still got the combination, which meant that he did land two clean quads. That in and of itself is a statement when you're the only one on the podium who's actually doing that. But this goes to show you that when you don't pair that with the same level of performance, it's not always going to result in you getting that top placement. But, for a first Junior Grand Prix of the season, he did his job. He did what he really needed to do, which was get himself on the podium, keeping himself in contention for the Grand Prix final. He just got bronze here, so it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, but it's something that's definitely still on the table. If he's able to show a cleaner skate at his next event, it definitely could happen. And with these kinds of programs that do have lots of difficult elements in them, they tend to feel more complete and get higher PCS marks when they're skated cleanly, just because the spell doesn't get kind of broken at any point in the program. So hoping to see that, and of course hoping to see just improvement overall in the components, because the potential is obviously there. And now on to probably the most discussed part of this Junior Grand Prix, the pairs event. I'm going to do this one in backwards order just because there was something really interesting that happened with the silver medalists here, and I want to have a little bit of time to talk about that without it eating away at the discussion of the other teams. So I'm going to start with the bronze team, which was the Canadians Catroci and Lacasse. So, as was told to us by Ted and Mark, this is a very new team. And when it comes to new pairs teams, there's often issues with compatibility that are very visible. Like, you'll kind of look at them, you'll see conflicting styles. They're still adapting to each other's style of skating, their techniques. And in this case, we didn't see too much technical difficulty, which sometimes is the case when you're working with junior pairs in general, just because the pairs elements take such a long time and it's such an amount of finesse to pull off in the first place. But the elements that they did do were mostly solid. The side-by-side jumps need some work, especially the double axel and the free that they had to fall on. But aside from that, this team does have, I think, a good rapport with each other. Their styles don't clash. And, luckily we didn't have that jarring look that you sometimes see when you're matching up pair skaters who used to skate with another skater. It's just very promising in that respect. They had two different styles of programs, and compared to dance, thank God that they're actually allowed to have unique styles. But in this case, they didn't have the most ambitious layout, but they did most of their elements pretty well. And that's kind of what saw them onto the third place of the podium over the American team, who had a more demanding layout, but they also had quite a few mistakes, especially in that free skate. So this team's strategy of just kind of playing it safe, getting their bearings and going out there and putting out what they're confident they can do definitely paid off, because they're walking away with the medal. Now, please excuse me because I'm going to have to skip straight to the gold medalist here. So right now we're going to talk about the Canadians who won the gold medal, Kemp and Elizarov. This team is actually the gold medalists from the previous Junior Grand Prix at Riga, and you can tell that this team has what it takes to win. Compared to what we were seeing before, this level of technical is much higher. They had two throw triples, they had two side-by-side triples, and a triple twist, and that is making them very competitive, especially as a junior team, because as we saw throughout the rest of this competition, there was a lot of throw doubles, a lot of side-by-side doubles. So it's nice to see, especially when you have those teams that are closer to going senior, that they have those skills that they need. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a program and that there wasn't a performance to back it up. Even though it wasn't necessarily the type of music choice where you can do a lot of accentuation, you can try to embody the vibe or the energy of the music. For example, with this one, they were very peaceful. They were very delicate in that free skate. And that came across. And I think that's also beneficial because that's helping them to pace themselves. And that results in a less error-prone program, let's say. At least this time it did. And I think that that's a very sound strategy. If that is indeed the strategy they're going for, maybe they just chose an aesthetic. But if that is a strategy they're going for, it worked out very well in this case. And they should be very, very proud of what they put out, because this is, especially, I have to reiterate this, for a junior team, this is exceptional quality. And now, the team that was probably the most talked about after this event, Guo and Zhang, the Chinese team that took the silver medal. And that is mainly because their first element in their free skate was a quad twist. But if you look at the protocol, they only received credit for a triple twist, which is kind of insane that that's something that actually happened in a real ISU competition. But here we are. This was a controversy that everyone was discussing for a period because it's just so absurd that we're having official competitions. The Junior Grand Prix is not a small deal. It's like at this competition, you would be expecting a higher standard than just completely wrong elements getting called and scored. It is insane that teams are throwing quads and getting credit for triples with no recourse. There's not really anything that could be done about this. Thankfully, if they had received credit for the quad, the difference between them and the gold medalists was great enough that that scoring difference would not have actually changed the results. But still, it's just kind of a crazy thing to have happened. It's just kind of a stupid error. The kind of error that you would think that we would be past now, but apparently not. Aside from just that, right? The programs I'm hot and cold on. The short program I thought was definitely a better fit musically for them as a vehicle compared to the long program. The long program, honestly, was kind of awkward to me. I just wasn't the biggest fan of it stylistically. For them, at least, some teams can pull that off, but I just wasn't very sold by it in this case. When, you're skating to this sort of lighthearted type of music and you're going around with this like poker face, like serious face on it, to me it's a little bit jarring. It's one of those things that I would avoid. Usually with junior teams you would think that they could kind of convey that, I guess, youthful vibe, but this team kind of was better with like the cool vibe in the short program than they were with that one. And also the free skate, it's kind of what I said about the Ukrainian ice dance team earlier. I'm not the biggest fan of these programs with the 3 or 4 to 5 music cuts going on through them. I would rather they just stay more continuous. And in this case, I know it was a soundtrack for a movie, but the music was different enough in tone that to me, it kind of took me out of the bigger picture of the program, especially when the tone feels mismatched to what is actually being produced on the ice. So that's kind of my gripe with that. On a technical level, the quad twist was very impressive, despite the fact that they didn't get credit for it. The side-by-side jumps are interestingly less difficult than the absurd difficulty that comes with a quad twist. So it's always a bit interesting to me to see, I guess, that training process that they've chosen to go with, where they're like, we're going to get a quad twist, and then we're going to have side-by-side double axles and a side-by-side double loop. That's interesting. The throws from this team were also humongous. So it's just really those side-by-sides that are keeping them a little bit held back compared to what they could be technically scoring. And in my opinion, it's a major contributing factor to why they were only silver here and not gold. But overall, of course, I can't say that this team is anything but extremely exciting when they're throwing out such elements. I just hope that they're doing it safely. It's always a concern with juniors doing difficult elements like this. Now, with that out of the way, before I end the segment for this Junior Grand Prix, I did want to kind of throw out a little question and see if any of you guys had anything that you wanted to suggest as far as like what should a process be for an appeals system, something like that. Because when you do have an egregious judging error like there was done here, what should there actually be able to be done about that? Because right now there isn't really anything that can be done about it, unfortunately. I don't know that I would be happy if we had an appeal system similar to the one that they have in gymnastics, because then you have results coming out and people thinking they have medal placements and then they get taken off the podium. I mean, we had a moment like that at the last Olympics, and I don't want that to come into our sport. But I don't know. I kind of feel like there should be something, I'm not sure what it should look like. So just thought I would throw that out there and maybe some interesting suggestions will come of it. But that's all I really have to say about Ankara. So thank you for listening, and I'm going to go ahead and move it to the next event now.
I'm Hyacinth, and today I'll be covering the Varese Cup, which is the third stage. I'll be talking about the medalists across all the disciplines in this competition, as well as 1 or 2 more standout skaters I think have potential. It is important to note that it is still early on in the season, and skaters are very much testing out their programs and refining them, so there may be a little more critique about program elements from me, but overall, I'm very impressed by what I've seen so far. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let us start with the men's discipline and our gold medalist, Taiga Nishino of Japan. Taiga placed first in this competition with 2 strong skates, having placed second in the short program and first in the free program to clinch the gold. Taiga, like most Japanese men, is incredibly talented in technical skating skills and has amazing jumps. However, his leg wrap during his jumps does leave some room for improvements, as it could definitely be tighter, and it might help with giving him a better access and more control on his jumps. I must confess that I liked Taiga's short program music better, as it felt like he was better able to showcase both his technical and artistic skating skills, as he was able to connect with the music more. Unfortunately for me, his free program fell flat and did not fully showcase his abilities to the max, as he did not seem to be able to connect with it as much as he did with his short program. However, with that being said, it could also just be the music itself, as choosing the right music isn't easy. You have to be sure that you can carry the weight of the music and not let it overshadow you. Unfortunately, I do think that Taiga was a bit overshadowed by his choice of music in his free program, but it is still early in the season and I think that he will have time to grow into it. That being said, throughout this whole competition and through both skates, Taiga was very much in control of all the elements in his program and put down the skates of his life, and I believe that he's one of the young men to watch as we continue this Junior Grand Prix series. Next, our silver medalist is Habin Choi of Korea. Habin put down 2 very solid skates to claim the silver in Varese, placing first in the short program and second in the free skate. Habin is a skater who I think is an all-rounder, having talent in both technical and artistic skills, and is definitely one to watch going forward, as it is very rare for a skater to have both technical and artistic skills. Habin put down an impressive short program, with the tech panel giving him a completely clean skate. And he has this incredible talent to connect with his music, and I really felt this during his short program, which he continued as well into his free program. In his free skate, his quad lutz was absolutely gorgeous. However, he did have a few errors in his jumping passes that placed him just behind Taiga Nishino of Japan. I must say that while I enjoyed his free skate, his Techno Pirates of the Caribbean was definitely not on my bingo card. However, I did enjoy his check sequence or his choreographical sequence set to that beat. It was definitely very creative and maybe something that I'll come to enjoy as we go on through this Grand Prix series, but it's definitely a very interesting and creative take, let us just say. Overall, I think that Habin did an amazing job during his Junior Grand Prix in Varese, and he is definitely one of the skaters that we should keep an eye on as we continue this Junior Grand Prix series. Let us move on to our bronze medalist, Shun Umura of Japan. Shun made his first appearance at the Junior Grand Prix series at Varese, and I have to say I am mightily impressed by him. His jumps have incredible height and rotation, which is quite rare, as skaters will either have the height or the rotational speed, and very few will actually possess both. Despite 3 back-to-back mishaps on his jumping passes in the latter half of his free program, Shun was able to lay down a solid skate to secure himself 3rd place in Varese, putting himself into the fight as we go into the Junior Grand Prix series in Nagoya. Throughout both his short program and his free skate, I would have liked to see a bit more artistic expression from him, as he has a lot of technical talent, but not a lot of artistry. However, he does have very strong foundations for artistry, and with some more practice, he could honestly be a very well-rounded skater in both technical and artistic skills. I'm very excited to see where Shun Umura will go, especially since this is his first appearance on the Junior Grand Prix series, and he would have many opportunities to improve, and hopefully many more seasons in which we can see the full extent of his abilities. My pick for the men's standouts is Tonghe Tian. This is his 4th season on the Junior Grand Prix series, so Tonghe is a veteran in the Junior Grand Prix. Tonghe is a very dynamic skater, and his jumps are absolutely fantastic, and he definitely has strong artistic potential. I say potential because he has a strong foundation. However, I think that he can do a bit more. And if I'm being completely honest, I feel like Tonghe was absolutely lowballed in his short program, as he delivered an amazing short program, but he only placed 7th going into the free skate. He delivered a wonderful performance in his free skate set to Prix from Game of Thrones, which I think really suited him well. Anyways, his free skate for me was absolutely the best skate of this competition, and every single one of his jumps were marked as clean. Not one was under-rotated. He did have a few edge calls on both of his triple flips, but for me this is a non-issue, as many skaters do often struggle with the edges on both the flip and the lutz. I would like to see Tonghe see if he can fix these, because it definitely can up his GOE, but overall I was very impressed with Tonghe in this first Junior Grand Prix of the season. And while he didn't exactly have the best showing at Varese, placing just off the podium, I'm still nevertheless very excited to see how his campaign in the Junior Grand Prix series will unfold, and he is definitely one of the men that I would keep a very close eye on. Moving on into the women's discipline, our gold medalist is Sumika Kanazawa of Japan. Sumika was absolutely phenomenal in the Varese Junior Grand Prix, and it is very hard to think that this is actually her debut Grand Prix appearance. And with that, she snatched the gold medal. Wow, talk about impressive debut. Her short program was set to Call Me Cruella, which is probably most well known if you tuned in at the 2022 Winter Olympics and that season, as Alexandra Trusova, the Russian rocket and quad queen, skated to it for the Olympic season. However, even with that mighty association, this young skater at just 13 years of age put down a stunning performance and secured herself first place in this competition. Her debut was nothing short of spectacular, and even Mark said that what is special about Sumika is that she has a foundation of good skating skills and technical element scores, and that her program was very much her coach Mie Hamada wanting her to step into the world with confidence, especially on her debut season, and Sumika certainly did that. She has established herself as a strong contender in this Junior Grand Prix series. A very small critique I have of Sumika is that I would like to see her improve her Lutz jump, as while she does have an outside edge, her picking foot does seem to be using the full blade assist to take off, and therefore it's not truly a toe jump, but this is still very early on in her career, so she could definitely fix it. Considering that the Junior Grand Prix Varese is the first time we are seeing Sumika on the international stage, and she has already put down an amazing performance and secured gold, she is definitely one of the skaters to watch, and she has the foundations to become a force to be reckoned with in later years. So I would definitely keep a close eye on Sumika going forward. Next, our silver medalist Sojin Yoon of Korea. I may be slightly biased, but Sojin's short program is one of my favorites out of this particular Junior Grand Prix. I have always had a particular fondness for her short program music, You Raise Me Up, as it is very melancholic but also reflectory, and it's a very technical piece that you absolutely have to connect with and fully immerse yourself in to be able to pull off, as there is like an emotional oomph that is to be associated with the piece, and to be able to properly convey it to the audience, you have to feel it, otherwise it just falls flat and empty. I think that Sojin did this wonderfully, as she is a naturally beautiful skater and has fantastic lines and great speed and power and a lot of control. Even Ted and Mark commented that Sojin has great control of her body and her blade control is filled with a lot of depth and edge, which contributes to her high scores in skating skills. I would have liked to see Sojin emote a bit more with her face to connect to the music, but that is a very small critique I have of her program. Overall, Sojin is a very elegant and artistic skater, and she always has beautiful extensions on her landing and all throughout her choreographic sequence and step sequence. So Sojin is another one of those skaters that we should continue to watch as the Junior Grand Prix series continues. Lastly, our bronze medalist is Yihan Wang. She's a very familiar face on the Junior Grand Prix circuit as she made her debut in the 2023 to 2024 series, finishing 12th at the Junior Grand Prix Hungary and 4th at Junior Grand Prix Poland. She further cemented herself the following year in the 2024 to 2025 season by claiming gold at Junior Grand Prix Thailand and a bronze at Junior Grand Prix China, which qualified her for the Junior Grand Prix final, which she placed 4th overall. Following her strong performances, she has once again had a very strong start to the season, as she placed 3rd in her first Junior Grand Prix assignment of this season. Yihan, being a veteran on the Junior Grand Prix series, having skated 2 previous seasons, proved that she is one to watch. She has great ice coverage and fantastic jumping techniques. Her jumps look effortless and her edge control is gorgeous, and she holds a wonderful outside edge on her Lutz jumps. And as we know, the edges on Lutzes is a particular hard one, as even more experienced skaters will have a flat edge and will receive a call. Her spins are also very centered, and I enjoyed both their programs very much. And I agree with Mark when he said that after the short program, the program is great and you can see the movement is totally reflective of what the music requires. I'm excited to see what else Yihan can offer and accomplish as she matures and continues competing in the Junior Grand Prix and further hones her skating skills and ability to connect with the music. My pick for the women's standouts of the Varese Junior Grand Prix is Karuko Wada. Karuko placed 2nd in the Junior Grand Prix final in the 2024 to 2025 skating season, and she is definitely a very well-rounded skater, having the artistry, especially flexibility, and also the technical components to her jumps as they're big and powerful. Kaoru actually reminds me of Kaori Sakamoto in her skating skills, as Kaori is known for her powerful jumps and speed into them, especially her double axel. And Karuko is very similar, as her double axel is also quite large, with incredible speed and length. Karuko made her free skate look incredibly easy as she put down a clean skate to clinch 4th in this competition. Karuko is definitely one of the junior women to watch, the rising star of the Japanese women's field, especially given that both Kaori and Wakaba have announced their retirements at the end of the 2025 to 2026 skating season. Now, moving on to ice dance. I must preface this by saying this is the discipline I'm least familiar with, as I don't really follow ice dance, except to come back once every few months to watch Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer's iconic Pyeongchang 2018 Moulin Rouge free skate. So I ask that you excuse me if my commentary isn't as detailed as it is with the singles, as that is my particular area of expertise. Without further ado, let's jump right in with our gold medalists, Jasmine Robertson and Chase Roner of the United States of America. Robertson and Roner delivered 2 stellar dances and placed first in both the rhythm dance and the free dance, securing the gold medal. And I'm not just saying they are stellar because they secured gold in both the free dance and the rhythm dance, but because I believe they had one of the best free dances of this particular Grand Prix. And maybe because I'm slightly biased and I am an absolute lover of the song Notre Dame de Paris, and they set their free dance to that. Let's get to the free dance a bit later. The rhythm dance, which is set to Groove is in the Heart, had fantastic energy, and I really enjoyed how much they seemed to connect with the music and just have fun. They had fantastic synchronization, and they barely, if not at all, were out of sync at any point in any of their elements, especially their twizzles. Their free dance is set to, as mentioned, Notre Dame de Paris, and as I mentioned before, this is one of my particular favorites, and I felt like they really conveyed the emotion and connected music on a personal level. And as I mentioned before, connecting the music has an effect on how well you can sell your program and the overall presentation. And Jasmine and Chase did that perfectly. I'm especially in love and impressed with their twizzles, as it is very hard to synchronize with your partner because everyone skates slightly differently, and someone can either go faster or someone goes slower. And Jasmine and Chase seem to do it so well, and honestly, it's very, very amazing. Jasmine and Chase also have incredible chemistry, and I think this is very, very surprising, as Verónica mentioned in the Riga recap. They have only gotten together quite recently, and they've already shown incredible performance, having secured a bronze in Riga and a gold here in Varese. Based on this performance, they're definitely a couple you should be keeping your eye on. Moving on to our silver medalists, Amber Perrier-Gisoni and Samuel Blanc-Klapperman from France. Amber and Samuel are one of the strongest contenders for this Junior Grand Prix series in ice dance, as they won the Youth Olympics in 2024, and it is their 3rd Junior Grand Prix series as a couple. And I think they were the most standout couple in this entire competition, as they finished 7th in the rhythm dance and delivered a free dance for the ages and placed 2nd, securing the silver medal. It honestly kind of gave me Adam Xiao-Him-Fa vibes from the 2024 Worlds, where he secured 3rd place after fighting his way from 19th after the short program. Now back to Amber and Samuel. Their rhythm dance was set to Everybody and Larger Than Life, and they did have an incomplete element in the rhythm dance as Samuel crashed into the barriers on the Rumba pass. I must say that Amber and Samuel did struggle a bit on their synchronization, as some of their twizzles were out of sync and didn't look as pretty as their lines didn't match up. But their rhythm dance was nevertheless very enjoyable, and they performed great and seemed to enjoy and connect their music. In their free dance, they performed to a selection of the music from Legend of Tarzan. And while their free dance was gorgeous, I can't but help but like their rhythm dance a bit more, as I felt like they were more able to connect with that music, and something about their free dance just felt empty to me. That being said, their connection to the music did improve in the second half of their free dance, and I was better able to see the emotion and connection, but it is definitely something for them to work on. Their synchronization was also better in the free dance, and their twizzles a bit better, but definitely could have been cleaned up a bit more. Nevertheless, this was a great performance and comeback from Amber and Samuel, and I'm very excited to see how they'll continue going forward throughout this Junior Grand Prix series. And our bronze medalists are Summer Homick and Nicholas Bulow of Canada. Summer and Nicholas placed 4th in the rhythm dance and 3rd in the free dance to secure the bronze here at Junior Grand Prix Varese. I think their artistry is incredible, and they have this ability to be very emotional in their performances, and it really helps with delivery and it helps to sell it to the audience. Their rhythm dance was set to Larger Than Life and Everybody, which is the same as Amber and Samuel, the previous couple that we just discussed. Summer and Nicholas have great chemistry together, and their synchronization is absolutely amazing, as most of their moves are incredibly in sync and they didn't seem to put a foot wrong. Their rhythm dance was certainly something to behold. Their free dance was set to Ghost, the musical soundtrack, and it might be the costuming and the fact that they're Canadian, but they do remind me of Piper and Paul, the ice dance couple in Canada. That being said, both Summer and Nicholas are both just 18 years of age and definitely have much more room to improve before they step on the senior circuit. So I'm very excited to see how far they'll go as a couple and how they'll continue to improve. They have this amazing ability to, as I said before, convey the emotion of whatever soundtrack they're skating to. And while it was evident in the rhythm dance, it was made more so in the free dance, as the two pieces are two completely different genres of music, with the rhythm dance being more upbeat and the free dance being more melancholic. And they certainly didn't let either one of these pieces overshadow them. They did have a small mishap in their sync twizzles when they're facing in two completely different directions, and thus out of sync. And through this example, we can see how hard it is to actually be in sync with your partner. I think Summer and Nicholas are a couple you should definitely keep your eye on, and they honestly might be the future of Canadian ice dance, and I can't wait to see how they improve as they continue along their journey together as a couple.
This brings us to the end of part 1 of this Junior Grand Prix recap. This was way longer than expected when putting it together in editing. So we're going to do the second half in another video and then another one for the final. Thank you so much for sticking around, and we hope you do enjoy the other 2 videos. Please watch them. If you want to get in on the discussion, not only of the Junior Grand Prix, but the Senior Grand Prix and the upcoming Nationals and ISU Championship season, follow us on our social media, but also join us on our Discord server, and we will see you all next time.